The music stopped. 70,000 voices fell silent in an instant. Michael Jackson, mid-verse in Heal the World, suddenly cut his vocals. The stage lights began to dim, and in that surreal moment of suspended reality, the king of pop did something no one expected. He ran, not toward the crowd, not toward the cameras, but toward the backstage corridors, chasing after a man whose shoulders shook with uncontrollable sobs. But how did we get here? How did the world's biggest superstar abandon his concert to follow a stranger into the shadows? Let's rewind. Wembley Stadium, July 16th, 1988. The Bad World Tour was at its absolute peak. Michael Jackson didn't just perform on stages. He commanded them like a force of nature. Each show was a carefully orchestrated symphony of lights, choreography, and pure musical genius that left audiences breathless. That night at Wembley, everything seemed perfect. The sold-out crowd moved as one organism, feeding off his energy, singing every word back to him with religious fervor. But in the VIP section, something far more profound was unfolding. David Matthews sat with his 9-year-old daughter Emma. This wasn't just any concert for them. This was a promise fulfilled, a dream materialized against impossible odds. Emma had been battling leukemia for 2 years, and through every chemotherapy session, every hospital stay, every moment when hope seemed like a distant memory, she had one constant dream: to see Michael Jackson perform live. David had moved heaven and earth to get these tickets. He'd written letters, made desperate phone calls, even sold his car to afford the VIP package. Tonight wasn't just entertainment for this father and daughter. It was a miracle they'd been told might never come. As Michael Jackson glided through his set list with otherworldly grace, something magical was happening in the audience. Emma, despite her frail condition, was on her feet, her thin arms raised high, her voice barely audible, but her spirit blazing like a supernova. David watched his daughter transform before his eyes. For these precious hours, she wasn't sick. She wasn't dying. She was just a little girl living her dream. But dreams have a cruel way of colliding with reality. Midway through Heal the World, Emma's legs gave out. The excitement, the crowds, the sheer emotional intensity. Her small body simply couldn't handle it anymore. As she collapsed in her seat, gasping for air, David felt his entire world crumble around him. The medical team on standby rushed over. And in that moment of pure chaos, David realized the unthinkable. They might have to leave. They might have to leave before the show ended, before Emma could experience every last moment she dreamed of. Michael Jackson suddenly stopped singing mid-sentence. The arena fell into a death-like silence. What happened next defied every protocol, every security measure, every rule of professional entertainment that had ever been written. Michael Jackson, standing center stage under the blazing spotlight, had locked eyes with the commotion in the VIP section. Through the sea of faces, past the cameras and the chaos, he could see it all. The medical team rushing around, the concerned faces of security, and right in the middle of it all, a small girl who looked like she was fading away, and a father whose heart was breaking in real time. Without explanation, without announcement, without consulting anyone, Michael Jackson signaled to his band to stop. The music died. The lights dimmed, and in front of 70,000 people, the king of pop walked to the very edge of the stage and did something unprecedented. He pointed directly at David and Emma's section. Security was confused. The production team was in complete chaos. But Michael Jackson's intentions were crystal clear. David, holding Emma in his trembling arms as the medical team worked around them, felt someone tap his shoulder. A security guard, breathing heavily from sprinting up the stadium steps, leaned down and whispered words that seemed absolutely impossible. Michael Jackson wants to see your daughter. Right now. What followed was the most beautiful chaos Wembley Stadium had ever witnessed. As David carried Emma through the winding corridors, 70,000 people waited in hushed anticipation. The entire venue held its collective breath, somehow sensing that they were about to witness something extraordinary, something that would change them forever. Backstage, Michael Jackson had already abandoned everything. His elaborate costume changes, his perfectly choreographed routine, his entire show structure that had been planned down to the second. Still wearing his silver sequined shirt, now damp with perspiration and raw emotion, he waited. When David appeared around the corner, Emma weak but somehow still conscious in his protective arms, both men locked eyes across the dimly lit backstage area. Neither spoke at first. The weight of the moment was too profound for words. David's tears flowed freely now, and Michael Jackson, the superstar who commanded global attention, who could make stadiums shake with his presence, approached this broken father and his dying daughter with the tenderness of an old friend. But here's where this story takes an incredible turn. The part no one could have predicted. Michael Jackson knelt down to Emma's eye level, bringing himself into her world rather than pulling her into his. In his hands was something precious, his iconic white glove, the one he'd worn during Billie Jean, the symbol recognized by millions around the world. But more than that, he carried something else. Something small and silver that glinted in the backstage lighting. A harmonica that he'd been holding throughout the entire show. "Emma," he whispered, his voice still carrying traces of his stage presence, but now intimate, personal, vulnerable. "I heard you singing along to every song out there. Your voice, it's absolutely beautiful." Emma, despite her weakness, despite the tubes and the medical equipment, despite everything her small body had endured, managed a radiant smile. "I know all your songs," she whispered back with the pure honesty that only children possess. What happened next broke every heart within earshot. Michael Jackson began to hum "Heal the World," not the grand, orchestrated version that had filled the arena moments before, but something gentle, personal, like a lullaby passed between souls. As he hummed, he placed that silver harmonica into Emma's small, fragile hands. "This," he said softly, his own voice now thick with emotion, "is for all the songs you're going to sing. All the dreams you're going to chase. All the healing you're going to bring to the world." David watched this exchange, his tears now mixed with something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. This wasn't just a celebrity meeting a fan for a photo opportunity. This was one human soul recognizing another, one dreamer acknowledging another dreamer's sacred right to dream. When they returned to the arena, something unprecedented happened in the history of live performance. Michael Jackson, still holding Emma gently in his arms like she was made of the most delicate glass, walked onto that massive stage. The crowd erupted in confusion and excitement, but he raised his free hand for silence. "Tonight," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of Wembley Stadium, reaching every soul in that sacred space, "we have a very special guest performer. Everyone, I want you to meet Emma." What followed was pure magic. The kind of magic that reminds you why music exists in the first place. As Michael Jackson began "Heal the World" again, this time acoustic and gentle, stripped of all production and artifice, Emma lifted that silver harmonica to her lips and played along. The sound was soft, fragile, imperfect, but it carried across that stadium like the most beautiful symphony anyone had ever heard. It was the sound of hope refusing to die. It was the sound of dreams made manifest. It was the sound of healing happening in real time. And then 70,000 people began to sing. Not screaming, not cheering, not the usual chaos of a rock concert. Singing. Gentle, reverent, unified singing. The entire stadium became a choir. And at the center of it all was a dying girl, a crying father, and a superstar who had just redefined what it meant to heal the world. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment below, because the most powerful part of this story is still coming. The concert ended differently that night. Instead of his usual explosive finale with fireworks and choreography, Michael Jackson sat on the edge of the stage. Emma beside him, their legs dangling over the edge like two kids on a playground. Together, they played that harmonica while the crowd sang softly in the background, creating a moment that transcended every boundary between performer and audience, between celebrity and humanity. David stood nearby, no longer crying tears of despair, but tears of gratitude for a moment that would sustain him through the darkness ahead. A moment that proved miracles don't always look like healing. Sometimes they look like connection. Emma passed away 3 months later, but not before she'd filled those final months with music. That harmonica never left her side. David later revealed that she played it every single day, recreating that magical moment when she shared the stage with her hero, when she became part of something larger than herself. But here's what Michael Jackson never publicized, what never made the headlines, what the world never knew. Every single month until his own death in 2009, he sent a personal letter to David, not through managers or publicists or assistants. Handwritten notes asking about David's healing, about his memories of Emma, about how music was helping him cope with the unthinkable loss. That silver harmonica became more than a memento. It became a symbol of hope for an entire community. David eventually donated it to the children's hospital where Emma had been treated, where it now sits in a display case with a simple but powerful plaque. From Emma, who taught us that healing the world starts with healing each other. The impact rippled far beyond that single hospital. News of the harmonica's donation spread, and other children's hospitals began reaching out to David. He started visiting young patients, sharing Emma's story, and bringing music into their lives. He learned to play simple melodies on a harmonica himself, teaching sick children that music could be medicine for the soul. What started as one father's grief transformed into a movement. The Emma Matthews Foundation was established 3 years later, providing musical instruments and therapy to children fighting terminal illnesses. David partnered with music therapists, creating programs that brought healing through sound and rhythm into the darkest corners of pediatric wards. Michael Jackson quietly supported the foundation from its inception, though he insisted his contributions remain anonymous during his lifetime. Only after his death in 2009 did David reveal the extent of Michael's involvement, sharing some of the personal letters that had sustained him through the hardest years of his life. That night at Wembley changed Michael Jackson too. Those who worked closely with him noticed a profound shift in the months that followed. A deeper connection to his humanitarian causes, a more personal approach to his interactions with fans, especially children facing illness and hardship. The Heal the World Foundation, which launched shortly after this concert, carried the spirit of that backstage encounter in every single project it touched. Every hospital visit, every charitable donation, every moment of kindness could be traced back to a crying father and his dying daughter who reminded the king of pop what true healing looked like. Years later, when critics would question Michael Jackson's legacy, when controversies would cloud public perception, David Matthews would remember differently. He remembered a man who stopped the world's biggest concert for one small girl. He remembered a superstar who knelt down to eye level with the powerless. He remembered hands that were gentle, words that were kind, and a heart that broke for others' pain. Share this story and make sure to subscribe, because moments of humanity like this should never be forgotten. The music industry is full of performances, full of spectacle, full of manufactured emotion designed to sell tickets and move merchandise. But that night at Wembley wasn't a performance. It was a reminder that behind every superstar, behind every global icon, behind every legend, there must remain something essentially, beautifully, vulnerably human. Michael Jackson didn't just heal the world that night. He showed us exactly how it's done. Not with grand gestures or global campaigns, though those matter too, but with presence, with attention, with the revolutionary act of seeing another person's pain and choosing to step into it rather than away from it. One father's tears behind a backstage door became the symphony that taught us all what it really means to be human. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's exactly the healing the world needs. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments how music has healed something in your own life. Because Emma's song isn't over. It lives on in every act of kindness, every moment of connection, every time someone chooses love over indifference. Keep healing the world, one heart at a time.